This is the story of one man's battle to produce budget music videos in the early 21st century. My name's Leonard Valve, and this has been my 10-year mission: to avoid court proceedings, bankruptcy, and not to end up living on a park bench. It's a story of people who could start a fight with their own shadow, and quite often do. A story of overinflated egos, tantrums, delusion, and alcohol dependency. And that's me on a good day. These are the music video diaries of a madman. Episode 3. Up on the Roof. As the summer of 2008 progressed, my newfound venture seemed to steadily crank into action. Most weeks I would meet up with 0742 and Monkey for our Tuesday Explore, which usually involved casing out a new derelict potential filming location. In early May, 0742 took me to quite an extensive derelict building in Sheffield that had absolutely tons of potential as a location. It was the former Williams Brothers factory on Kelham Island. It was a wondrous maze of big open rooms and even had what looked like a very atmospheric stage in it. There was a large metal roller shutter door which could be opened from the inside to allow vehicles to be driven into a secure courtyard area. This was to become the new Round the Corner Films headquarters and became known simply as The Factory. Over the summer, this became my #1 suggestion to clients as a location to film their videos, the most appealing factor being that it was free of charge to use. As I gradually built up a portfolio of work and was able to slowly bump up the price of videos, it became apparent to me that 3 scruffy and rather dubious-looking geezers in a disused building that they obviously didn't have permission to use wasn't exactly a great business model, and a big shoulder-mount, expensive-looking camera alone wasn't really going to give the Hollywood feel to proceedings. One day, I'd sent 0742 to the railway station to greet an artist. I distinctly remember phoning the artist to describe who would be meeting them.
Hi, are you at the station?
Yes, I'm just coming out of the station now.
Can you see a weird metal water feature in front of you? It's like a bit like a metal wall.
Hang on, I'm just going the way out. Yes, I can see it.
If you look to the very right of the metal wall, you'll see a fat homeless guy with a beard wearing a Rasta hat.
Yes, I think I know what you mean.
You'll know it's him because you'll be thinking, oh shit, I really hope that's not him.
Yes, I am thinking that.
Great, well that's our man.
Oh.
Which all goes to show exactly why a deposit should always be non-refundable. One day, as I was driving past a closed-down nightclub in Sheffield, my eyes were drawn to something quite interesting looking in a skip. As I investigated further, I discovered 2 discarded T-bar lighting gantries complete with 8 par cans, all of which were very quickly liberated from the skip and bundled into the back of my beaten-up old Jag. Upon getting them home, and with a minimal bit of rewiring, to my delight, I got both T-bars consisting of 8 spotlights working. Even the bulbs were all good. With the addition of some coloured gels and a very old and extremely temperamental generator bought cheap from a friend of a friend, Round the Corner Films now had its very own fully mobile lighting rig. Drunk on the sheer excitement of my ever-expanding movie empire, I invested in a small second-hand smoke machine. And it was with all this kit that I rocked up at the factory with 0742 and Monkey on a balmy July night to shoot my first fully lit music video. The band were called Death by Orchestra, and such was my confidence in how professional my whole setup now looked, the deal I struck with the band was that they would pay me £400 cash upon their arrival. I decided to shoot the video in the stage area of the factory that had very low and very rotten wooden beams above it, from which I hung a load of clear, low wattage tungsten bulbs to give a very music video look to proceedings. After many attempts, and after getting through a can and a half of Easy Start, the generator finally spluttered into life, and so did my lighting. After half an hour of experimenting with various coloured gels, repositioning the rusty old lighting gantries, and firing up the smoke machine, we had what looked to all the world like a very moody, immensely atmospheric, and utterly credible music video set. The time was approaching 9:30 in the evening, and as the band said they would be arriving between 8:30 and 9, I decided to give them a call to see if they were close by. The call went straight to answer machine. I killed the generator to save fuel, which prompted me to check the fuel level on the generator, and to my horror, it had used over half a tank of fuel in less than half an hour's running, which meant that we only had just over half an hour's worth of fuel left at best. With the band's arrival imminent, I decided to phone local drag artist, an all-round dog's body Tyrannosaurus Rex, to ask if she'd be kind enough to fetch us a can of petrol on her bike. As we waited in the ever-darkening factory, a thunderstorm approached.
Don't you think you should try giving the band a little tinkle?
You're probably right. Still no reply.
Perhaps you should leave a message.
Hello there, this is Leonard from Round the Corner Films. We're just all set up at the location waiting for you. We're just wondering where you are. If you could give me a call back when you get this, I'd be really, really grateful. Thank you.
What did they say?
You just heard me leave a message.
Ah, well, at least you got a deposit.
It's a cash on the day job.
What? Well, I was set up waiting and you didn't get a deposit.
I didn't need to be reminded of my own stupidity by 0742. But luckily, just at that moment, we heard Tia banging on the roller shutter door.
Anybody there? Anybody there?
Did you get the fuel?
Yeah.
Nice. Come inside.
I put £6 in. That's okay.
Yeah.
Oh, I should tell you that I'm doing a DJ set of Fairy Liquid later. I don't know if you're going to come down, mate.
Tia, have you ever seen me at Fairy Liquid?
No.
And that is because I don't go to drag
my
clubs.
set starts at 10 if you can make it.
As the storm subsided, we sheltered in the dark interior of the factory and waited.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I was just wondering what time you're expecting the band.
Almost 2 fucking hours ago. I mean, what kind of ignorant... Hello? Yes. Yeah. We're right past the Fat Cat. Yeah, keep going. And on your left, you'll see a derelict building with a transvestite stood outside.
So maybe this didn't quite have the professional air about it that I'd hoped for.
Yeah, there's a metal shuttered door. Drive straight in and we're inside there. Right! Let's get busy!
By the time the band had unloaded and set up, it was almost midnight. And my God, how good did the set look now that we had drums, cabs, and a band upon it. Before long, it was actually time to roll the camera.
Okay, we're all good. Run the track. And action!
The swirling orange mist from the fog machine enveloped the set, making the singer appear as a silhouette, casting shafts of light and shadows that reflected in the puddles of water that lay on the floor. Huge droplets of water cascaded through the soaking, rotten wooden beams and ran down the dangling dim bulbs that hung down over the stage. All rather dangerous, I'm sure. But as I looked into the camera monitor, what I saw looked fucking amazing. We repositioned the rather rickety camera crane and rolled off another few takes. It seemed like shit was indeed getting real, and despite my crew consisting of a tramp and a transvestite and filming in a sodden derelict factory in the middle of the night, the images going down the lens were most certainly the real deal. It seemed that surely nothing could stop me now that I had this little gem in my bag. Nothing, that is, until the generator died and we were plunged into complete darkness.
Okay, everyone, stay still. Don't move.
What's happened?
Jenny's run out of petrol. Has anyone got a torch on their phone?
Luckily, one of the band members had a light on their phone.
Where did you put the petrol can?
I think it's over there somewhere.
Bloody Christ here! Where did you put it? Exactly?
I thought I put it down here somewhere.
Hang on, what's this? Fucking hell! I've got it. Here, I've got a match. Jesus Christ, put that out! This is petrol! Do you want to blow us all up or something? Hang on. This ain't petrol. That's diesel, man! Tia, what did you put in here? Are you sure this is petrol?
I think so. I got it out of a petrol pump.
It is! It's bloody diesel!
What's diesel?
Oh, for fuck's
Is
sake!
it different to petrol?
Christ's sake, Tia!
Is it not the same?
And that was a wrap. I told the band that despite this minor setback, that we had indeed got enough footage. Quite how we managed to get the kit out of the wet, slippery and very dangerous interior of the factory in near darkness, lit by the light of the band's car headlights and one mobile phone torch, without anyone being killed or seriously injured, I don't quite know. The band seemed to accept my claim that we had all the footage that we needed and seemed only too pleased to escape the gloom of the factory. But despite the drama and the distinct lack of footage, a very nice video eventually came together and became a very strong part of my blossoming portfolio. Over the next few months, the Nut and Bolt factory saw many bands and artists pass through the rusty roller shutter door into the cavernous vaults of my music video empire. As the late autumn turned into early winter, it became very apparent just how cold and damp such a location with no heating was becoming, and how increasingly dubious it seemed for me to take money from artists to come into this dark, filthy and miserable place on the pretense of shooting a music video. It also hadn't escaped my notice how samey all the videos were looking. But despite this, the Nut and Bolt factory had now firmly become my easy, safe, and most importantly, free-to-use option. As most of the bands and artists I was making videos for were either instantly forgettable or just plain goddamn awful, it didn't really seem to matter all that much that I wasn't giving Steven Spielberg a run for his money in terms of artistic integrity or production values. What mattered was simply keeping the ship afloat. On a cold Saturday afternoon in late November, a band came over from Nottingham. They were a rather good rock band called NG26. It was days like these that I would wake from the coma of producing munch meat. And I remembered why I actually got into this game in the first place. Despite it being a bright, crisp, clear day, after being given the full guided tour of the huge factory and its many potential setup areas, the band, rather surprisingly, decided to opt for what I considered to be one of the most uninspiring parts of the entire factory: the underground basement. As per usual, Monkey and 0742 were my assistants for the day, and Julie helped the band unload all their gear and drag it down into the bowels of the factory.
Here, look up there,
said 0742, pointing to the flat roof of the factory.
That sky's gonna go.
What exactly are you suggesting?
let's set up on the roof. Imagine what it'll look like with a city backdrop when that sky goes in a few hours' time.
0742 certainly had a point, but the only way up onto the roof was a very precarious and rickety ladder. And I explained that trying to get a full drum kit, amps and lighting gantries up said ladder would be nigh on impossible. We soon got set up in the basement and fired up Hercules the generator, who despite the frosty temperatures seemed to be unusually ready and willing, only needing around half a can of Easy Start to spring into life. We soon had a few takes knocked off, and I quickly realised that the band were far beyond the usual no-hopers that I'd worked with. They looked good, sounded good, and they knew how to perform. And I began to imagine what they would look like fully lit on the roof with a cityscape backdrop and an amazing red twilight sky above them. Once we'd got everything we needed in the basement, I mentioned to Ant, the band's manager, about the roof idea. He enthusiastically suggested that we go take a look. I led the band and their entourage up through the maze of corridors, rooms and staircases onto the level below the flat roof that had a very dangerous, rickety-looking ladder propped up against it. As everyone carefully filed up the ice-covered and extremely slippery ladder, one of the band's girlfriends lost her footing and almost fell from the ladder. This was really starting to seem like a very silly idea. The potential of the roof as a setup location was undeniable, but so was the impossibility of getting all the gear up there without someone being killed. Just then, Monkey, who I had noticed scurrying off somewhere a few minutes earlier, shouted up excitedly from the floor below. I went to the edge of the flat roof to see what the problem was, and lo and behold, Monkey had in his hands a second dangerous and rickety ladder. My God, this could actually work, because you know what they say, 2 dangerous rickety ladders are better than 1 dangerous and rickety ladder. I didn't want to be the one to take the decision to forge ahead with this madness. But luckily for me, I didn't have to, as the band's enthusiasm for the task of dragging all the gear up through the gloomy building and somehow ascending the 2 rickety ladders onto the roof was overwhelming. Fucking hell. This was suddenly getting all rather exciting. I scurried through the dark maze of rooms in what was by now fading winter light to find a good vantage point to shoot from. Slowly, amp cabs and drums started appearing on the flat roof, beautifully backlit by the low winter sun. I dragged my rusty but ever-faithful lighting gantries to the base of the 2 wobbly ladders, where Monkey took one end of the gantry from the first ladder, as I took the other end of the gantry from the second ladder, and we slowly and precariously shuffled our way, step at a time, up the ladders onto the by now frozen and very slippery flat roof. God alone knows how the band managed to haul the heavy speaker cabs up by this method. Before long, both lighting gantries were set up and cables run down to Hercules the generator, who was chugging away to itself deep in the basement. The flat roof where the band was setting up overlooked the courtyard and had 2 buildings at either side and another building at the opposite side of the courtyard, which gave me a stunning vantage point from which to shoot the setup. I also set up my huge but rather dodgy camera crane on one of the side buildings to enable me to get sweeping crane shots from the space above the courtyard. The really worrying thing was that the crane setup was notoriously unstable, and when used at its full extension, bowed with the weight of the camera, which was far in excess of what it was designed for. As the sun finally disappeared behind the horizon of the city, the sky did indeed start doing its thing, just as 0742 had predicted, and the clouds were backlit by the most incredible red sunlight. It was showtime. Because of the fast-changing light, we would have to get several takes shot in as quick succession as possible. I had 0742 and Monkey holding on to the crane dolly for dear life, and it was time to roll the backing track.
And action!
The camera crane creaked as I swung it at a good 40 feet over the courtyard. If perchance chance the extremely stressed crane should give way, not only would all this effort be for nothing, but $6,000's worth of HDV camera would go crashing to the ground, taking with it my whole video production empire. Very quickly, and to my extreme relief, 2 takes were in the can, and I could detach the camera from the end of the crane and move to the building on the opposite side of the courtyard.
Okay. Run the track.
It's running. Action!
What have I told you about saying action? You don't say action. I say action.
Hang on, something wrong.
Jesus, what's wrong with it?
It's a wire to the amp. It's loose.
Jesus Christ, try and waggle it about.
I am doing. Hang on. Hang on. Oh,
Come on, we're losing light.
oh shit. It's come off. What? It's come off. Look.
0742 held the end of the wire that plugged the MP3 player into the amp via a 3.5mm jack that was still plugged into the amp.
It's buggered.
No, 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 no.
I ran through the ever-darkening building, down a flight of steps, across a balcony, through a window, through 2 rooms, and up another flight of steps, and out onto the edge of the roof where 0742 and our knackered playback system stood.
What lead do you need, lads? We might have one.
Asked Ant, the band's manager.
It's the 3.5mm jack to jack.
We've got a 3.5mm to 1/4 inch, if that'd do.
No, it's 3.5mm on both ends.
What about if we go into one of the guitar amps? Might that work?
Yes! That would work. Monkey, go and fetch another extension cable.
It seemed to take forever for Monkey to get the extension cable out the back of the van, while all the time the sky just got more spectacular. But by now, the light was fading very quickly. At last, Monkey appeared back on the roof with an extension power cable. We hooked up the MP3 player to the bass cab, and lo and behold, we had sound once more. But this delay had cost us dearly. By the time I eventually got back to my camera position, it was obvious that the sky had passed its peak. But the show must go on.
Okay, run the fucking track!
As I looked through the camera viewfinder, and more by look than by judgment, the image of the band I was seeing looked spectacular. Through the zoom lens, it looked as if the band were right on top of the cityscape behind them. Several more takes were knocked off before I repositioned onto the very top of the roof of the building opposite the band. After a couple more takes, the red sky had all but disappeared, and it was time for the final scene to be shot. The pièce de résistance. The pyro shot. The band had spent almost as much as they were paying me for the whole video on 4 huge pyro charges. They were all set up and ready to blow, and I repositioned myself and my camera to a window in the building opposite the setup.
Okay, are we all ready? Quiet, Monkey. Pipe down, baby.
I don't like loud noises.
Okay, I'm going to say 3, 2, 1, action. At which point you set off the pyros. Right? So it's 3, 2, 1, action.
The pyros went off, sending 4 huge columns of flame into the air, which looked absolutely spectacular.
Right, so I'm going to start running the camera now. What? So when I say action,
We
you let the pyros go.
We've let the pyros go.
Okay then. 3, 2...
Mate, the pyros have blown.
Wasn't you filming? What do you mean the pyros have blown? I'm not running the camera yet.
The faces of Ant the manager and the whole band were a picture at my little joke. But it goes a long way to explain why I'm not often asked back. Oh, how we laughed. Although the laughter soon faded as we contemplated getting everything back down from the by now extremely slippery and frozen rooftop through the maze of pitch black corridors and stairwells. Despite the minor setbacks, when I got back to the editing suite, a caravan down the side of my house, the footage looked magnificent, and I worked into the wee small hours editing what was by far my best video to date. As 2009 dawned, I was using the musicians section of Gumtree to advertise, which gave me a slow stream of work that was just enough to keep my head above water. Then all at once, and without any kind of warning, Gumtree banned me from advertising in their musicians section and told me that I must instead place my ads in the services offered section. Although I was now beginning to build a decent portfolio of work, there would be no one to see it, because my whole advertising strategy was to be able to place my budget music video production services in front of musicians who might not have even thought about putting a video together until they saw my ad, and not people looking for dog sitters or house removals. I was screwed. At the end of January, I shot a video for a band that had blagged the use of the London Palladium for a few hours. Once again, the band were a shining diamond in the sea of munchmeat. I had yet another jewel in my portfolio. As I drove back up north after the shoot in my beaten-up old Jag, I was still buzzing from working at the Palladium and of having had a radio in my hand to enable me to direct the theatre lighting. Not that I had any kind of clue what I was doing. But as I drove through the night, I contemplated that this shoot at the Palladium could indeed be my swan song. I'd had an incredible year and some unforgettable experiences. But is this where the story ends? I thought to myself. I'd noticed a thing on Gumtree called placement ads that were all at the top of the page. I wondered what these ads were and how I might get my ad up there. I soon noticed that these placement ads, or sponsored ads, were everywhere and always turned up on Google searches. So I did the logical thing and Googled sponsored ads. And it turned out that Google was the main orchestrator of these ads. But I was on the absolute bones of my arse, and I couldn't afford to pile money that I didn't have into an ad campaign that might not work. After further investigation, it transpired that there was no upfront fee to use Google Ads, and it was pay per click. And I could determine the search term that would make my ad show up on a search. I dare not think it at the time, but this could potentially be a massive game changer. The big problem I had with advertising music videos was always the question of where do people go to commission a music video? I mean, where do you look for one? There isn't exactly a shop on the high street. What you do is you Google music video production. And if that was my search term, you'd see an ad for Round the Corner Films Expert Music Video Production Services. And that ad would link to the Round the Corner Films website, where I would showcase my few triumphs. It was a long shot, and if my gamble didn't pay off, I had no money to pay my bill with Google. But if my business fails, as it surely will without an effective means to advertise, I'm already in shit up to my neck. So what harm another bucket load? I switched my Google Ads on the 25th of March. On the 27th of March, exactly a year to the day since I had my very first inquiry, I received a call.
Hello, Round the Corner Films. How can I help you?
Hello, mate. I've just seen your ad on Google. I'd like to inquire about producing a music video for my band.
Oh my God. I really didn't care who they were, what they wanted, how bad they were, or how little money they had. My Google ad was working. And this might just be the lifeline I need to keep me from shelf stacking in Tesco's. Stay calm. Don't appear too desperate.
Yes, we'd love to shoot a video for you. Yeah, definitely. We've got plenty of availability. When should we start? What's your budget? Are you okay to pay a deposit? Definitely.
I've seen on your website a video that I really like. It's a rock band on the roof of a building. How much did that cost?
They were talking about the NG26 video. It had been my biggest budget video to date. But could I dare push these guys to a whopping £500 budget?
Yeah, you're referring to the NG26 video.
Aye, that's the one. How much would something like that cost?
I knew that I had to start high, then come down to whatever their budget was, as I needed this job like I've never needed a job before. But what should be my bottom line? 300? 250? No, fuck it, I need the work. I'll go down to 200. But I'm going to start high. Dare I say 700? Dare I?
That video was 500.
500? Is that all?
Shit!
Well, I think it was 500. It might actually have been a little bit more.
Right, well, if you shot that video for 500, if we want to spend £1,000, our video will be twice as good, right?
Right.
That's great then. I'll have a talk to the lads and we'll arrange a meeting. We'll pay a deposit then.
Okay.
Nice one. Cheers, mate.
Well, so much for my negotiating skills. But who gives a shit? I not only just had a massive lifeline thrown to me, but I had bagged my first £1,000 job. Now for the small matter of working out exactly what constitutes a twice as good as the NG26 video, and how on earth I might go about delivering such a thing. About a week later, I had a meeting with the band at Ferry Bridge Services on the M62, and to my utter disbelief, they handed over a £500 deposit in used banknotes. It had been agreed that we would shoot at the nut and bolt factory in Sheffield, and we'd do a setup on the roof. But I had to work out exactly what I could bring to the table that could possibly justify my £1,000 fee. The factory had many large cavernous rooms, and there was one room just before the rickety ladders onto the main flat roof that I thought could be perfect to dress as a set for the band to perform in. 0742 suggested that I bought some brushes and paint for Monkey to set to work on the walls with his incredible artistic talent. I also bought a few old metal chandelier type light fittings and duly hung them from the ceiling. With the addition of a few random old TV sets and the trusty but rusty lighting gantries, we had created what was all in all quite a music video-y looking set. When the band arrived, they hated it and suggested that we shoot in the basement. What is it with bands in that goddamn basement? I managed to eventually persuade them to use the room that we'd spent many hours set dressing. Once the band had got their gear set up on the set, and I'd eventually cured all the wiring faults on the chandeliers, it all began to look rather rock and roll. A good few takes were knocked off before we reset on another section of flat roof, before eventually moving to the NG26 part of the roof to shoot the final scenes as the sun set. I'd also hired a young female street dancer, who, although at first the band were very unsure about, they soon came around when they saw how well she complemented their music. And I'm sure most of, if not all of the band, ended up with her phone number. So as we waved the band off on the way back to Durham, it seemed like I'd pulled off yet another triumph. All the stuff that went down the lens had looked good. After a very long, hard day, 0742, Monkey and myself packed up the gear once more in the darkness of the old nut and bolt factory, and I dished out a few quid to 0742 and Monkey. Well, actually I had to give Monkey's money to 0742 because Monkey isn't allowed money. I drove back home that night feeling absolutely knackered, but also feeling very accomplished that I had most definitely given the band a good show for their money. Now just a small matter of editing the footage from the 3 one-hour HDV tapes that I'd filled. The edit was hard work, partly because of the fact that I knew the band were expecting something amazing for their money and I had to impress them. And also because of the sheer amount of footage I had shot, causing my edit computer to groan at having so much footage to work with on one timeline. But eventually, a rather good video began to emerge. I got it to a point where I thought it was time for the band to see where I was at with the video, and I uploaded it and sent it to them via a private YouTube link. And I waited. It's always quite a nail-biting wait, wondering if the band will love or hate your work, but I was quietly confident that they would like it. A day went by. Then 2. I could see by the playback counter on the YouTube video that it had been watched 62 times, and as the band were the only ones with access to the video, it had to be them watching it. Eventually, I could stand the silence no longer, and I dropped them a text. Any feedback? I received a reply saying, "We'll get back to you shortly." Then after another couple of days, I eventually received a call.
Hello, mate. It's Daz from 21 Reasons.
Alright, Daz, how's it going?
Not bad, mate.
Good. So what's the verdict on the video then?
Before he had even drawn breath to answer, I could tell that he wasn't at all impressed, as he had the tone of someone who had just given me their beloved pet spaniel to look after for the afternoon, who I had tied on its lead to the bumper of my car whilst I took a leak. Then I got back into the car, forgetting all about the spaniel tied to my bumper, and I'd gone for a 28-mile drive down the motorway before remembering about the dog, and I just broke the news to him.
We watched it a good few times, like.
Right.
And to be honest, mate, we're just not sure about it.
I could feel a knot beginning to tighten in the pit of my stomach.
Right, so what exactly is it that you're not sure about?
Well, the whole thing, really.
I could feel the anger rising in me at Daz giving me such a fucking dumb, generalised and nondescript reason for not liking the video.
Could you be a little bit more specific than that?
Well, we did say that we wanted to film in the basement, and you said that room would look best, and we just don't like it.
My piss was by now boiling at what I saw as nothing other than utter stupidity. How the fuck could they compare something that they have seen to something that they haven't seen? How could he know what a setup in the basement would even look like?
Well, to be fair, Daz, we spent a long time preparing that set, and I did send you photos of what we were doing, and we had everything set up in that room. Lights, cables, and everything. And to be fair, we only had one day to do the shoot.
We just don't think it works for the track, man.
Okay, what about the rest of the video? I mean, we've got some pretty spectacular shots on the 2 roof setups.
But if you remember what I said when I first phoned you, I said that we like that video you shot for that band on the roof.
You mean NG26?
Aye, that's the one. You said that one cost 500.
That's right.
Well, you said that if we paid $1,000, our video would be at least twice as good as that one. And it isn't. In fact, I'd say the NG25 video...
NG26?
Aye. That NG26 video is better than ours.
Look, I don't agree. If you look at their video, there's only 2 setups, and yours has 3 setups, a dancer.
But their video is better.
He kind of had me on the ropes here, because there was truth in what he was saying. But I certainly wasn't going to admit that I'd screwed up.
So I think if you just refund our deposit,
Now hold
we'll
on.
call it quits.
I shot the video to your own brief and at a location that you wanted. And I've gone way beyond what we did on the NG26 video.
You told us come up all the way to Sheffield to
You
film
said
it.
you liked the location.
But you told us that it'd be twice as good as that video.
Who says it's not as good?
We do.
Well, maybe It's you that's not as good.
If you don't provide us with a full refund within 7 days, we'll be taking you to court and get the refund plus all our expenses.
And the moral of the story is, never admit to an artist how much another artist's video has actually cost. Or you'll be digging your own fucking grave. Next time, MC Fishcake calls about his new music video project. Dan from Big Brother 5 goes for a manicure, and I consider whether to throw the footage from a day's shoot into the lake. Next time on the Music Video Diaries of a Madman. Copyright 2021. Light Engine Productions. But don't tell anyone.